Tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Emanana Aho from Sound Foundations for Literacy. This video is about teaching sight words. So these are the high frequency words that we want our learners to have a really good hold of to help them build fluency when they're reading text and in their own free writing. And we want them to know how to read these words and spell these words. And I see a lot of hard work going on in classrooms to try and help students build a bank of these high frequency words. And sometimes they just don't seem to stick. And so I wanted to share with you what the research says about how the brain stores words and the ways that we can teach these words in a way that really helps to make them transfer into long-term memory so they can use them again easily. So we're going to talk about reading words by sight or off by heart. And I'm going to take you through what this orthographic mapping is. It's a term that's being used a lot now when people are talking about evidence-based literacy instruction. And it really refers to the way that we store words to remember later in our brain. So first up, a bit of a vocabulary lesson. Orthography is the word that we use to describe the writing system of a language. So orthos means straight and correct. If you think about going to the orthodontist, they make straight teeth. And graphos refers to writing in symbols or making pictures. So orthography is correct writing. So it's a spelling system used to record a language. And so orthographic mapping refers to how we store those sequences of written symbols in our brains to remember what words they are. So words are either unfamiliar words when students are reading, which need to be phonically decoded, so they need to come across a word they don't know and use the letters in the word to try and lift it off the page, so to figure out what sounds those spelling sequences are representing. That's called decoding. So they're either unfamiliar words that they don't know how to read automatically, or they're sight words, which are words that can be instantly and automatically recognised, and they're just read effortlessly. So when you and I see a word as skilled readers, you can't not read it. It just pops off the page at you, and you can hear it in your mind. You're not sounding out through the word as you go. So in the research, sight words actually talks about any word. It doesn't need to be a high frequency, irregularly spelled word. But I know that in our schools, sight words tend to be the really high frequency words that we want our learners to be able to read and spell easily. In lots of classrooms that I work in, the children are using activities that help them to learn these sight words off by heart. So I see things like writing words in chalk, building words out of Duplo blocks, or building words on a tray. And the idea is that when they read and write these words many, many, many times, that they will be stored in long-term memory and they'll be able to recognise those words. What I don't see a lot of is helping the kids to understand how those letters relate to the spoken sounds in the word, and that's what we know is really important for learning words. Okay, let's explore a little bit about how we actually read words. First, I'm going to tell you how we don't read them as skilled readers. The first way is we don't recognise words as a whole unit, and we don't recognise them by the shape of the outline of the letters. That's one theory about how we read words. We don't recognise words and store them as a whole picture or a whole unit. So they're not stored. Words aren't stored in the same place that we store our memory for what things look like. So we don't store it in the same place that we'd recognise an object like a chair. Words are stored in a different part of the brain. Words are stored as a specific sequence of graphemes, which is letters and letter combinations used to represent sounds. And the brain hooks those graphemes. So say in the word chairs, we've got ch, air, z, ch, air, z. And it hooks these letters here, and these specific letters, ch, air, z, onto the three phonemes of that word, and that's the Velcro that keeps them stored in our long-term memory. So orthographic mapping is when we map the orthography or the letter sequences onto the phonemes of our spoken language. We are piggybacking on top of the oral language circuit of our brain. So let's explain that a little bit more. So say the word cat. We read the word cat in text over here, And our brain can use our phonological awareness to separate the sounds in that word, and it knows that it's made up of the phonemes k, at, and then each of those letters is mapped onto the spoken sound within the word. How does that work when the words are a little bit irregularly spelled? So say we've got the word said written down. We can see the letters S-A-I-D, and we know that's the word said. Your brain also knows, through phonological awareness, that the phonemes in the word said are S-E-D. And so it's treated just the same way. It doesn't really matter if the letters aren't the most common spelling pattern. So here we have AI representing the E sound. Your brain will map on that specific letter sequence onto the sound. S-E-D. And when it has done that successfully, it will be transferred into long-term memory. Okay, another example of an irregular spelling. So we've got the word comb. Your brain knows through phonological awareness that the three sounds in the word comb are k, o, m. So it can map the letter sequences onto the phonemes of the word. That MB is actually not that uncommon spelling of the m sound. And then when we see the word, we can take in all the letters at the same time. That's called serial processing. So your eyes, as a skilled reader, can take in up to 11 letters at a time, but they're not recognizing them as a picture. They are transferring that letter sequence and matching it to the stored sequence in your mind, and your brain then quickly converts that into like an audio signal. So you are then able to understand the word as if somebody spoke it to you. And if we want to spell a word, we go from sound to print. So all of these examples I was showing you going from print to sounds, but here when we have those stored, we can say, right, I want to write the word bought. We know that word has these three phonemes, and the or sound is represented by a quadgraph, 4 letters for one sound, ought. Here's a really important piece of knowledge that we can share with our learners, and I'm going to admit I didn't realize this myself until not that long ago, is that the alphabetic code, which represents our spoken language, we have 44 phonemes. You can watch our other video about phonemes to discover what those 44 spoken sounds are that we use in English. And we only have 26 letters to represent those spoken sounds, and that those speech sounds are represented by combinations of 1, 2, 3, or 4 letters, but never more than 4. So here we have cat, and the sound t is represented by 1 letter. In fish, the one phoneme sh is represented by 2 letters. That's a digraph. In night, we have one speech sound I represented by 3 letters. That's a trigraph. And then in sleigh, the A sound is one phoneme represented by 4 letters. That's a quadgraph. So single letter, digraph, trigraph, and quadgraph. It's quite liberating when you realize that you never get any more than 4 letters at one time to represent a sound, although obviously that's pretty complicated. That's why it takes so many years for us to master. All right, so words that we come across in text, they can be sight words, which are words that we can just read effortlessly and instantly on sight. They might be high frequency words, and this is, the sort of top 100 or top 300 words that we see in lists like the Dolch list and the Fry list, both of which are great to use. The Fry one is it's updated, so it reflects more modern text words. And those words within those lists can be spelled with regular phoneme grapheme correspondences. So the red ones I've got boxed up here have got basic code. So 1 letter, 1 sound, and short vowels. A, e, o, a. So our kids, as they learn that basic code, usually in the first year of school, they can decode these words. They're fairly straightforward, especially once they get to being able to do consonant clusters or consonant blends like in from. We don't really need to teach these words as words to memorize off by heart, because the kids are going to be able to decode these as they build up their letter sound correspondence knowledge. With a little bit more code knowledge, say when they get digraphs like TH and a vowel team, OR for or, even more of these words are fully decodable, can be sounded out in a straightforward way. And then we get these irregular words, and these words get all different sorts of names in the teaching literature. So we might have tricky words or exception words or heart words or red words, criminal words, and these are ones where the spelling correspondence is not as straightforward. And it's usually due to pronunciation changing over hundreds and hundreds of years from Old English. For example, in was, we've got w, o, z. So usually we'd expect that to be a letter O and it's a Z sound at the end there, w, o, z, but it's spelled W-A-S. And so that is more tricky for our beginning learners to orthographically map. But the brain's going to use the same process for those words as it does for these regular ones. Unfortunately, a good proportion of the most high-frequency words do have these irregular spelling correspondences, and that's why we want our learners to master them in the first couple of years of school so that they can get going with reading and writing. Usually these words are only irregular in terms of one or two letters or one or two sounds. So for example, in the word said, the S represents the sound we expect it to. The D does its job. It represents the D sound. It's the AI that's an irregular part of the word down here. And another example is in they, TH represents its usual sound, v. And then we've got a more irregular representation of the A sound. We've got EY instead of AY. And I know that lots of your kids will spell it AY. It's good that's showing they're using their phonological awareness, but they just need to build that understanding of correct orthography or the correct spelling patterns. There's only a small handful of really irregular words. These are some of them. So one and once, we've got a W sound at the beginning, which is not represented. I, was, friend, and people are some. There's a handful of about 38 words only, which are very irregular words, which do need a high level of memorisation. But even so, there are ways of helping students memorise these words that will be much more efficient than other methods. So I want to share those with you. I'm showing you an example of some spelling lists here. So this is what's often used in New Zealand classrooms, our New Zealand essential spelling lists. These are composed based on the frequency of the words found in the beginning readers. One thing about them is that there's just no regularity within them. It doesn't help learners to understand how our written code works. It's like giving them a series of PIN numbers to memorise. What we really want to do for our beginning readers and writers is to help shine a light on the regularities of our written code and show them how to crack it. So I want to show you some other ways to organise and introduce these high-frequency words in a way that will help our learners to make sense of our writing system. So here's an example from Phonic Books UK, and they've organised the first 300 words into a sequence of increasing complexity. And this isn't the whole poster, but it's freely, they're very generous, they make it freely available on their website, and I'll link to it below. So all of these words in the top half of the poster are basic code, so one letter, one sound, or our regular digraphs, and moving from simple phonetic structure, so vowel consonant or consonant vowel consonant, right through to having consonant blends in them, like consonant vowel consonant consonant here. And then you see we introduce the digraphs later. The bottom half of the poster has more complex spellings. For example, when we have one sound represented by multiple vowel teams, so here we've got the long A sound in the first box, and it's represented by a split digraph, so A consonant E in came, or an AY in may, or an EA in great. But it gives us a different way to introduce these high frequency words that will really match the developmental levels of our beginning readers. So now I'll take you through a little teaching routine, which is a way to present new high frequency words that will really help our learners to connect the letter sequences to the spoken sounds within the word, which will support that orthographic mapping process and help them transfer those new words into long-term memory storage. I'm going to go through an instructional routine that you can use for teaching high-frequency words, especially words that have irregular spelling or that have a spelling pattern that your learners haven't been taught yet. So for example, they might still be working through the basic code, you know, one letter, one sound, CVC words, and they might not have learned digraphs where two letters represent one sound, so the word the or for would be difficult for them to decode and read, or difficult for them to spell because they've not learned that yet. So here's the routine. First, we introduce the word out loud. So we go from what students know. We go from their spoken language and take it to their written language. So we're going to say the word for them. We're going to make sure they understand what that word means and they recognise that word. We're going to segment the word into its sounds. So a lot of the time I'll hear from teachers that these words are tricky words, they're irregular words, and they can't be sounded out. Well, if a word can be spoken, if we can say a word, we can sound it out. So what really helps that long-term storage and memory of written words is what the brain needs to do is connect the specific letter string to the spoken sounds within the word. So when we do that, when we break up the word into its sounds, we're helping that process. So we split the word into its sounds. We then add letters, we add print, and we show our learners how the letters line up to the spoken sounds. And then we get them to practice those words in their writing. So practice writing the words, practice reading the words, words on their own, and then words in sentences and in text. They're going to get a lot of practice as they come across those words in text because they're high frequency words. So here's an example word. The first one I'll show you is for. Okay, so today we're going to learn how to write a new heart word, a word that really helps us in our reading and our writing, and the word is for. Like, I had Weet-Bix for breakfast. Okay, you say the word, for. Great. Okay, now let's listen. What sounds can we hear in the word for? F, or. Two sounds, f, or, for. So I can hear two sounds. I'm going to put two lines on my board. Okay. We're going to write down a letter to spell the sound f. Yep, that can be letter F. So, and the way we write down the or sound in this word is with OR. Now you haven't learned how to spell that sound just yet, so it's a bit tricky. So I'm just going to highlight that one. I might say that we have to remember that part off by heart. I'll put a little heart there. Or I might highlight the tricky part to make it sticky so it can stick in our brains and we can remember it. There we go. Forgive me, I'm just using one of the kids' crayons. Okay, so we've got our word for. I had Weet-Bix for breakfast. Let's say the sounds and read the word. For. Okay, everyone, you pick up your pens and I want you to write that on your whiteboard or in your writing book if that's what we're doing. Write down the word 4 times across your page and say the sounds while you write them down. So the kids now will know this routine and they're going to get their little whiteboard or their page and they're going to write down or, for, or, for. And you want to hear that murmuring as they're saying the sounds out loud and writing them down. So what they're doing is they're really reinforcing those connections between the spoken sounds of the word and the graphemes, the letter or letter strings that are representing those sounds. Okay, let's do another example. Today we're going to learn how to write a new heart word, the word said. This comes up a lot in our reading and our writing. So the word said. You say the word? Said. All right, as in, Mum said, get up now or you'll be late for school. Mum said, get up. Okay. Say the word said again. Said. What sounds can we hear in the word said? Let's do finger spelling. S, e, d. 3 sounds I can hear in the word said. So let's put them up here. S, e, d. All right. Now we're going to look at how we can write those sounds down. So this is the beginning of the word and this is the end of the word. Said. at the beginning I can hear S. Okay. You know a way to write down S. Yep, letter S. So S, E, D. How can we write down D? Yeah, letter D. Okay, now in this word, it's a bit of a tricky way to write down the E sound. And this is how we write it. It's 2 letters, 1 sound, so it's a digraph. S, E. So we've got A-I, and they say the E sound. Say the sounds and read the word with me. S, E, D. S, E, D. Seed. And that's how we write seed. I want you to pick up your pens and write that on your whiteboard 4 times. You say the sounds while you write them. And they'll pick up and do that. All right, I'll do one more basic kind of sight word that we might give our students so they can get moving with their fluency in reading and writing. So we'll just do the word the, which comes up, I think that's our most common word, so we really want them to have this one, but it has a digraph in, which is a bit more tricky than our basic code. So today we're going to learn a new heart word. It's the word the, as in the Queen waved in the parade. The. You say the word the. Great. What sounds can we hear in the word the? Let's fingerspell. V, ah. Yeah, 2 sounds. So I'll write them up here. V, ah. Okay. The way we write down the sound V is with 2 letters. So it's a digraph. 2 letters, 1 sound. V, ah. Letter E saying the ah sound. Let's say the sounds and read the word. V, ah, the. Okay, and then I would get the students to write it down, saying the sounds out loud while they write it. One more thing I want to point out is, firstly, I've forgotten to put highlight the tricky part. So if I come back in your teaching routine, you're going to say, this is the tricky part. We know how to spell S and D, but this AI is really tricky. I'm going to put a little heart there to help us remember that bit. So I might put a little heart over top of that. Or you can do highlight the tricky to make it sticky. So just going to go over that with my highlighter. And the same with both the sounds in the, because unless we're saying the as in the end, E is saying the sound, and TH is a spelling that they probably haven't learned yet. So I'd highlight both parts that we need to remember. They're both new spellings to remember. So we've got 2 heart parts in this word. Okay. So one last thing I wanted to say is that it's really good to bundle words together to highlight how regular the spelling patterns can be. So for example, say you're introducing the word be, which is an open syllable. So we've got E, B. Open syllable means there's no one vowel letter, no consonant closing it in, so the vowel is going to say its long sound. In this case, E, or say its name. That's a really common pattern, and you can bundle that together with words like we, she, and me. Same thing we could do with there, here, and where. And you can see I'm trying to use a whiteboard marker on paper and it's running out on me. These have got the same spelling pattern in them, and they all relate to place. So put it there, put it here, where did I put it? So they all have this H-E-R-E. So highlighting things that will help kids to notice how spellings are regular. Could, should, and would are another example of good things to bundle together. If I show you how to do a trickier word, one that might come a little bit later on, how about I do the word people? So today we're going to learn a new heart word, how to read and write a new word, and this word is people, as in lots of people like ice cream. You say the word people. People. All right, Let's clap the syllables in people. What syllables or beats can we hear in the word? People. Great. There's 2 syllables. And let's listen for the sounds. What sounds can we hear in the word people? Let's fingerspell. P, E, P, O. 4 sounds. Okay, let's write a line for each sound. P, E, P, O. Okay. How do you think we might spell the first sound? P in people. Yeah, letter P. E in this word is spelled with 2 letters, and it's a very unusual spelling. I'll show it to you. E-O, that's unusual, isn't it? E, that's right, another P. And then the ul at the end of the word is like another word you might know. Do you know how to spell the ul sound in table or marble? Let's have a look, I'll write them for you. Okay, so table, that's right, the LE pattern, and marble. Okay, so that LE pattern is the way we spell the ul sound of people. Okay, so we've got 2 tricky parts in this word that we need to remember off by heart. We've got the EO spelling for the E sound, P, E, P, O, and then this LE spelling pattern, which we see in lots of words like table and marble. All right, let's say the sounds and read the word back. Ready? P, E, P, O, people. Okay, pick up your pens and you're going to write that 4 times across your line. Say the sounds while you write it down. So after you've introduced a word using that introductory teaching routine, we still want our kids to practice those words. So writing those words, reading those words as words on their own, but also we really want to get them reading those words in text and writing those words in their free writing. So just a small tweak that you can make to their practice when they're writing these words. So all these lovely activities that you probably already do, like rainbow writing or writing the words in sand trays, is to get them to say the sounds as they write them. The same way I did in the video when I was demonstrating. Say they're writing the word was in the sand tray, you want to hear them and get this routine going where they're saying woo, ah, z, was. Woo, ah, z, was. Or say they're writing the word to over on the rainbow writing there. You want to see them going t, oo, to, t, oo, to. And that will really promote that orthographic mapping process. And of course, same thing with these other activities I mentioned before, so writing in chalk, building them out of blocks, putting them on the magnetic tray. We're not trying to help them remember this as a visual picture. We want them to connect the phonemes to the specific letter sequence. So we want to see them saying ow, s, as they write that word out.
Should. Should. Or should.
That's the last one.
Or should. I'm going to highlight this part because it's the text bit.
Nice work.
Snake. Snake. Said. Again.
You can also read that one again, can't you? And it has the same sound as said.
Said. Again. Again. Made. Made.
And finally, we want to, of course, support our learners to read these words in the text they're reading. So obviously, in their reading books, they're going to come across lots of these words because they're high frequency words. I hope that gives you some practical strategies to help make sight words stick for your learners.